Good morning, everyone. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done like a full setup for these. And I wanted to do it because before I get into the research bit of the day, I wanted to have a little bit of a check-in on the tabletop role-playing game project more generally and kind of where we're at with it. So we've been kind of chugging along with preliminary research. Now I call it preliminary research even though in essence what I'm doing right now isn't massively different than what I will be doing for a more like full-on, less preliminary research. There might be one or two extra things that I would do. So for example, I'm really needing to go to the British Library in order to get a hold of some resources, but they've had a massive cyber attack recently, and so I can't really dibs books, which doesn't mean I'm not able to access them, but I can't guarantee that they'll be there, and it takes me an hour and a half to get into London, and it would be a whole day that could be wasted just because a couple of books aren't available. So I'm gonna wait a little longer to see if I can get in a bit later. They're slowly more and more on system than they were before. But anyway, point is that I wouldn't be doing that many different things. It's more of the mentality with which I am approaching the research. So right now, my mentality is very open. Not that it's ever closed, but it's at least a little bit more narrowed in a sense. So right now, I'm just kind of letting the whirlwind take me where it does. In future, I'll probably be putting a little bit more stoppage on things of going, ooh, I think that's actually outside the purview of what I'm doing. I'll look at it. I think it's interesting. I'll take note of it for anything that I want to do in the future. But then I will kind of put it in the pocket of future and keep doing what I need to be doing for now. But right now, that's all open, that's all available to me, and that's kind of the only difference. I've been doing a couple of interviews. I don't have loads, but it's very early on. Typically, with any research project, you don't have massives at the beginning, and then it starts to snowball as more and more people hear about it from the people that you've interviewed, and then there's more people, so it's kind of one of those things. So it's always slow going at the beginning, which is fine. I don't want to have hundreds of interviews right off the bat. That tends to be a lot. I'd rather be able to focus on the few things that the few people have said and take that as somewhat of guidance. And then if there is alternate ideas when I get into the deep research, then that's an interesting alternate perspective on the same topic rather than something that maybe I shouldn't have done. Although sometimes that happens, that you start to pursue something and then you go, ooh, actually, that wasn't really a thing. But not very often because, like I said, the interviews are always guided by the community and therefore what they're talking about is stuff that they find interesting and is important. It's just whether or not it's also important to you as the researcher and where the research is going. I think one of the problems is, for those of you who are not aware of some of the details of me as a person, which is probably most of you, I am an incredibly organized person. Very, very organized. My desk at the moment is not a good display of it because it is very messy, but I am an incredibly organized person. And part of this also comes into play when it comes to my organization of my work and my workloads. I was incredibly thoughtful in December when I was planning out 2024, really thoughtful about how much energy each step of each project took, making sure that I sketched out exactly what I should be doing on what exact date in order to make sure that I never had too many things that were mentally taxing all happening at the same time. The problem is the world has not been working in my favor. Not only have I had some personal stuff, which obviously also is mentally taxing and takes a toll that you need to kind of take into consideration when you're thinking about your capacity for things, but also some of the steps that I had planned on taking a long time have been taking a very, very short time, and some of the things that I thought wouldn't be taking as long are taking a very long amount of time. So as an example, I was working on a bestiary and trying to shop the bestiary to publishers. I am still working on the bestiary. However, it has been a lot of a harder sell than I thought it was going to be. It's a lot more niche than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was kind of pitching it as incredibly accessible, like even more than my other cosplay stuff. It's very like coffee table book with info, and it's a fun A to Z, super easy, super basic. Thought it was an easy sell. It has not been. It has not been. I've had some people that are interested in the topic, but not the way I'm presenting it. I've had people interested in the presentation, but not the topic. And it's just been a lot of a harder sell than I thought it was going to be. So that's taking a lot longer. The edits on my fiction book, Caramel Latte, took a lot shorter of an amount of time than I thought. I thought I would only just now be finishing editing it and only just now starting the querying process, when really, in reality, I started the querying process at the end of February. It is currently mid-April, so that's a long time that I've been querying the fiction book, which I hadn't really intended on doing this whole time. And I mention all of this because the tabletop role-playing game book and research has actually been a pretty nice dedicated space for me that has been plodding along very at its speed. I have not felt like it has been progressing more than it should or slower than it should. It has been progressing exactly as it should, and that has been very, very nice for me given the current circumstances of every other project. The problem is, I just looked at my kind of, okay, what's coming up next down the pipelines, and realized that very soon I should be working on the proposal for the tabletop role-playing book to then start trying to shop that book. And the problem is even more so because I am intending on trying to get a nonfiction agent with this book. I have 4 books published at the moment that are nonfiction books, and I have never had an agent. I didn't really need them when I was doing the academic books, which were the first 2. The others I was able to work with publishers directly, which has not been necessarily a terrible thing. I do have some publishers who are already interested in the tabletop role-playing game book and have already been talking to me a little bit about it. So I could theoretically go without an agent for this. However, I have had some run-ins with publishers where it would have just made my life a lot easier if I had an agent in the situation, not just for getting the book published, but in the dealings with the publisher after the contract has been signed. There's a lot of different roles that an agent can fulfill, and actually getting it to a publisher is only one small part of it. And I kind of would like an agent for the rest of it. Not necessarily for the publisher side. Basically, this is all in order to say and explain that if everything progresses the way that it has been with the other projects and progresses the way that this book is, I will essentially be shopping 3 books at once, and that's not counting a 4th book that I may or may not be already querying publishers with. So that's too many. It's too many. It's too many to be sending out to publishers and agents and be waiting back. That process, while it's not very work heavy as far as mental strain, or as far as like physical strain, like time that I have to spend doing it, it is taxing emotionally. And the other problem is, on the off chance that they all come back within a very similar time period, and all are now expecting me to write it. And now I'm having to write 3 to 4 books all at once, which also is not a very smart idea to be doing. I had kind of hoped to be planning out my structures where I was always writing 2 things at a time, like at most, and it was always a nonfiction paired with a fiction. It was never multiples of any of those. And so suddenly having the prospect of needing to be doing a lot of them at once is already stressing me out, even though it's not even happening. All this to say, that I actually have control over the tabletop role-playing game. Right now, I don't really have as much control over every other project. I don't have control over the bestiary at the moment. It's out with publishers. There's nothing I can do about how long they're taking or whether or not they'll take it. I have no control over the way that agents are dealing with my fiction book. It's already out there. There's nothing I can do about it. However, I do have control over the tabletop role-playing game book because I haven't sent it anywhere yet. It is just at the research stage. I can live in that stage for however long I want. That being said, there are some limitations on this preliminary research stage. The reason why it is important for me to get it sold at a particular point in time is because of the advance. So the advance is money that the publisher gives you before the book is published. Typically, it is at the point in which you sign the contract. They give you the first half, and then they give you the second half when you submit the manuscript to them. Sometimes it works at different time frames, but 90% of the time, those are the time frames that you are given when you are working with a publisher for a nonfiction book, I should stress. The advance is basically an advance on the royalties that you will be getting eventually. So say I get a £600 advance. That means that the first £600 that I make in royalties, I've technically already be given. So I don't get that because it's basically that money. The reason why the advance is really important to me as the nonfiction writer is because I use that money for research. I have no fund for research, particularly for this project. For Cosplay, I did end up with a bit of money as a research fund because I did an Indiegogo campaign in order to raise some money for that. I don't know whether I want to do another one of those for the tabletop role-playing game book. I haven't firmly decided, but considering I've already announced it, I don't really think I'm going to be. I've already started the process as well, and I haven't really decided exactly how much traveling I really need to be doing for it. So, the amount of money that I need for research isn't as much as the Cosplay book, at least at the moment, it's seeming that way. With the Cosplay book, I had to travel to cons, so price of the ticket, if I did have to pay for the ticket, some of the cons I didn't have to pay for the ticket, but if I did have to pay for the ticket, there's that price, there's the travel to the con, there's the hotel to stay at the con, those all cost money in order to be able to do the active field work at cons. Cons, I think, are less important to go to for tabletop. There are ones that I could go to, but I don't think they're as relevant. I don't think that I would be missing out on an incredibly important aspect of how people play tabletop games if I don't go to a con. Quite a lot of players that I've talked to already don't really go to cons, or if they do, it's not for tabletop games. And so, therefore, I don't really see that I need to necessarily do that. However, money is still very useful. Money is useful for being able to pay for resources like books that I need to purchase that are relevant. If I need to pay for access to a particular journal article, which I don't necessarily have to pay for the actual article, but sometimes I have to pay for it to be shipped to me as like a photocopy. Because I can get photocopies of journals through the British Library. So if I'm getting it sent to me, then I tend to have to pay for that. If I'm going to go to the British Library, I have to pay to get to London and back, which isn't massive, but these things add up over time. And it's not something that I can really afford to be paying massively out of pocket for. So those are the kinds of things that the advance would be going towards, which does help the research process, and it also does help the book be made. So this is my qualm, if you catch me, is that in order to keep going with the research, I'm starting to get to that point where money would be nice. I don't think it's quite necessary yet, but it is starting to get to that point where it would be nice. However, starting the process of giving it to a publisher or an agent is not really within my mental abilities at the moment, because I'm already doing that with 2 other books. Now, I could go ahead and just send it straight to a publisher and just say, hey, I've got this, because I already have 2 publishers that have expressed interest. So I could just give it straight to them and deal with getting an agent later. So that's always a possibility. That's a decision that I need to be making within probably the next 2 months, which is a very big decision to be making in 2 months. Now, if within the next 2 months one of these other books resolve themselves, then I will probably be able to have the mental fortitude to start sending out the proposal. But yeah, I think that's kind of where we're at, unfortunately. And I know this is kind of looking down the pathways a tiny bit. Like, this is about, like I said, it's about 2 months from now I would be starting the process of sending it out. Basically, at the start of next month, I need to be writing the sample chapter. The next month after that, I will be putting together the actual proposal, with the idea that about midway through that month, so what is that, May, June? About halfway through June, end of June, I would have the proposal done and ready to send out, and I would be starting to send it out. I don't know whether this other stuff is going to be resolved by June. It would be nice. It would be nice if one of them was resolved. That would be incredibly helpful. But I just don't know if that's going to happen. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is I'm doing research. I'm going to be doing research today. I have stuff lined up. Like I said, I've got stuff lined up for the next month and a bit. But what that ends up meaning down the line, what that ends up meaning when it comes to how much research I can manage to do before I just have to get on with the project and start taking the bullet and sending it out, I'm not really sure. That was a very long rambly thing that I don't really know if you really needed to know, but it's just what's on my mind, especially because if I do end up having to just kind of shelve this project for a couple of months just because everything else is crazy, then I don't want you to be wondering where the hell this project went. Obviously, I'll let you know if I'm shelving it for a couple of months, but I don't know if I'll ever properly shelve it. I think maybe I'll just do very light research, nothing very hefty, nothing that costs anything, and just whatever I can do will probably be what I do. Anyway, that was a lot. I am very sorry. So, all that out of the way, I'm sorry, after that diatribe, I'm going to explain a little bit about what we're doing today, because I am doing research today, and I'm doing research on the project, and today is kind of wholly focused on the tabletop role-playing game research. I do have a meeting at 2, so I'm going to try to do whatever I can up until 2 o'clock. It's currently 10, so that gives me a couple of hours that we're going to try to do everything that we can, which is a couple of things. I have written down here what we're doing. All right, the first thing that we are doing is I have an interview transcript that I need to make notes of. I've done 1 or 2 off vlog before, but I'm going to do this one on vlog just so you can get an idea of what I'm doing. Basically, I'm going to be going through the interview that I had, listening to it, and making notes for future reference. The next thing that I'm doing is going to be going through my readings list. So I have some stuff pulled up that I have as potential things that I need to be reading. I'm going to be going through and adding a little bit more to it, basically finding what is out there, what I can do, what I can find. I might check on the British Library and see how it's doing and how it's progressing with everything. Get an idea of what research is out there, what research I need to be doing, and how I can access that material. And then accessing what I can, making notes of where I need to go for the other ones, because also I could go to a local university library if I need to. So just making all of those kinds of notes. And then basically doing a little bit of reading if I have any time at the end of all of that, of actually pulling up something and doing a little bit about it. So that's what we're doing today. A lot of research, starting on the stuff that is, I think, the most important to be done today, which is the transcript. So, yeah, let's get going. Okay. It is about 1:30, so 3.5 hours on it isn't too bad. As I said, I've got a meeting that I've got to get to soon. So I'm gonna go make toast and then do that. But yeah, I ended up not being able to get any of the actual reading of anything done. But that's fine. I think all the other stuff was just, it was necessarily time consuming, particularly the reading gatherings. I mean, I think it took me about 2 hours alone just to do the interview transcript. So yeah, I mean, I just didn't really have time to do the research reading. I might try some later this week, but we'll see if I get around to it. But yeah, I think that was it. It's a lot more of the gathering side of research rather than the reading bits. But that is just kind of how it go. Yeah. Anyway, that's it for me for the day. All right. Anyway, I'm going to go. So thank you for coming along with me and doing all the YouTube stuff, as I'm sure you are going to do. And that's it. Bye.